The punch came without warning. 1 second I was standing by the kitchen sink, watching soap bubbles swirl down the drain. The next second, pain exploded across my chest like lightning striking an old tree. I stumbled backward, my hip catching the counter edge, and suddenly I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at my 15-year-old grandson Tyler standing there with his fists still clenched, his face twisted with rage over a spilled soda. My daughter Rachel rushed into the kitchen, her work heels clicking against the tile floor I'd laid myself 20 years ago. She looked at me clutching my chest, gasping for air. Then she looked at Tyler. And then she said the words that changed everything between us forever. "Dad, be strong. He's just emotional right now. Just emotional." As if emotions gave him permission to hit a 74-year-old man. As if being emotional erased the bruise already forming under my shirt. That night, lying in bed unable to sleep, I realized I was living in a house where respect no longer existed. Morning came too early. The bruise had spread across my chest during the night, purple and black like spilled ink bleeding through paper. Every breath hurt. Every movement reminded me that my own family thought violence against me was something I should just endure quietly. I dressed slowly, buttoning my flannel shirt with fingers that shook from anger I didn't know I still had inside me. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled like burnt toast and coffee. Rachel stood at the stove flipping eggs, humming some song from the radio. Tyler sat at the table I'd built from oak, scrolling through his phone with the same hand that had struck me yesterday. His father Marcus read the newspaper without looking up. Nobody mentioned last night. Nobody asked if I was okay. The silence felt deliberate, like they'd all agreed before I came down that we'd pretend it never happened. I poured myself coffee with trembling hands. "Tyler," I said quietly, "I think you owe me an apology." Rachel's humming stopped. Tyler didn't look up from his phone. Marcus turned a page of his newspaper, and my daughter sighed like I'd just asked her to climb a mountain. "Dad, you're being too sensitive." That Friday, Rachel's sister Amanda came for dinner with her husband and their 2 kids. I thought maybe with witnesses present, things might be different. Maybe Tyler would feel ashamed. Maybe Rachel would acknowledge that something wrong had occurred. I was a fool for hoping. Halfway through the meatloaf, I tried to tell the story. "Funny thing happened the other day." I started, cutting my potato into small pieces because chewing still hurt my chest. "Tyler here got so angry, he actually hit me. Right here." I touched my chest where the bruise had started fading to yellow-green. Amanda's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Marcus didn't look up. "Boys need to express their anger somehow," he muttered, reaching for the salt. "Better he learns to manage it at home than out in the world." Tyler smirked at his plate. Rachel shot me a warning look that said stop making this awkward. Even Amanda's kids, usually so chatty, suddenly found their food fascinating. Only little Mia, Tyler's 8-year-old sister, glanced at me with something like sympathy before looking away. The rest of dinner tasted like cardboard and betrayal. That night, I realized no one in that house would ever defend me, but I could make sure they'd regret underestimating me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked around me with familiar sounds. These walls I'd helped build. This roof I'd repaired after the storm in 2008. This whole structure existed because of my labor, my money, my sacrifice. And now I was just a burden they tolerated. I got up around 2 in the morning and went to the garage. My tools hung on pegboard walls, organized the way I'd kept them for 50 years. Hammers and wrenches, saws and levels. I ran my fingers over the handle of my favorite hammer, worn smooth from decades of work. That's when the idea started forming. Not revenge exactly. Something quieter. Something that would remind them who they were dealing with. I pulled out my old toolbox and smiled in the darkness. Respect isn't given freely anymore. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, one careful step at a time. I spent the next hour planning every detail. By the time I went back to bed, I knew exactly what needed to happen. They'd forgotten who I was before I became their convenient old man. Time to remind them. Monday morning I stopped talking. Not dramatically. Not with announcements or explanations. I simply stopped offering words they didn't deserve. When Rachel asked if I wanted eggs, I nodded or shook my head. When Marcus mentioned the weather, I stayed silent. When Tyler walked past me in the hallway, I looked right through him like he was made of glass. The first day, they didn't notice. The second day, Rachel frowned when I didn't respond to her question about dinner plans. By the third day, the whole house felt different. Tense. Like everyone was waiting for something to break. "Dad, why are you being weird?" Rachel asked Thursday morning, her voice sharp with irritation. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said nothing. Just sipped my coffee and stared out the window at the bird feeder I'd built last spring. This is ridiculous, Marcus muttered. You can't just stop communicating because you're sulking. But I could. And I did. Because every word I'd spoken in this house had been ignored or dismissed or used against me. My silence made them uncomfortable in ways my words never had. They'd forgotten how much peace costs until I stopped providing it for free. Tyler's basketball came through the side yard fence on Saturday afternoon, snapping one of the cedar slats I'd replaced just last summer. The crack echoed like a gunshot. He came stomping around the corner 5 minutes later, face red from running. Grandpa, you need to fix the fence, he said, not asked. Said, like I was his personal handyman. I was sitting on the back porch with my newspaper and coffee, enjoying the September sunshine. I looked at the broken fence, looked at my grandson with his entitled expression and crossed arms. Then I smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something colder. Sorry, son, I said slowly. Old men like me need rest. Doctor's orders. Can't be doing heavy labor anymore. Tyler's mouth fell open. He'd never heard me say no before. Not to him. Not to anyone in this family. But, you always fix things, he stammered. I did, I agreed. Past tense. He stood there sputtering for another minute before stomping back inside to tell his mother. The fence stayed broken, and I stayed sitting, reading my newspaper, feeling something like power returning to my old bones for the first time in months. The shift in power had begun, and he didn't even realize it. The next Tuesday, while everyone was at work and school, I drove to the electronics store on 5th Street. The young man behind the counter looked surprised when I asked about hidden cameras. Small ones. The kind you don't notice easily. Security system for my room, I explained. He showed me models. I bought two. One looked like a phone charger. The other like a clock. Both could stream video to an app on my phone. Back home, I installed the charger camera on my dresser, angled toward my bedroom door. Then I set up the clock camera in the living room bookshelf, hidden between my old carpentry manuals. I wasn't planning to spy exactly. I was planning to prove. Because I knew if I ever spoke up about how they treated me, Rachel would say I was confused. Marcus would call me senile. Tyler would lie. But video doesn't lie. Video shows truth in ways words can't. That evening, I tested the cameras from my phone while sitting at dinner. Crystal clear footage. Perfect audio. Tyler was laughing about something with his father, and I heard him say, "Grandpa's being such a baby about everything lately." Rachel nodded, smiling. Evidence, I thought. Evidence is power. And I just armed myself quietly. I spent 3 days reviewing the footage before I found the perfect clip. Tyler mocking the way I walked, hunched over like he was ancient and feeble, while Rachel laughed in the kitchen. Her laugh was the worst part. Not angry or shocked. Just amused. Like her son, making fun of her father was entertainment. I saved the video to 3 different places. Then I sent it to Rachel's work email. Just the video. No explanation. Just truth in digital format delivered directly to her professional inbox. She called me 2 hours later, voice shaking with fury. "Dad, what have you done?" I was in the garage organizing nails by size when my phone rang. I let her yell for a full minute before interrupting. "I showed the truth," I said calmly. "That's all. Just the truth. You're trying to ruin my reputation. My career. Everyone at work saw that video." "Good," I said. "Then everyone at work knows who you really are." She hung up. When she got home that evening, she slammed through the door like a tornado, face blotched with tears and rage. "You're leaving this house," she screamed. "Pack your things. You're leaving." I nodded slowly. "After I finish something I started," I said. She wanted to argue, but I closed my bedroom door in her face. The first real boundary I'd set in 3 years. She piled my belongings into cardboard boxes and left them by the front door like garbage waiting for pickup. Clothes I'd worn for decades. Books I'd collected over a lifetime. All stuffed carelessly into boxes marked Herald stuff. Like I was already erased from this family. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Every night that week, I stayed up writing letters at my small desk. 1 letter for Rachel. 1 for Marcus. 1 for Tyler. 1 for Amanda. 1 for little Mia. And 1 for the lawyer I'd be calling tomorrow. Each letter told a different version of the same truth. Some were gentle, full of disappointed love. Others were sharp, cutting with the precision of a man who'd spent 50 years measuring wood to the exact millimeter. The longest letter was for Rachel. I wrote about her mother, my wife Gloria, who died 6 years ago believing her daughter would take care of me. I wrote about every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd swallowed my pride, every bruise, physical and emotional, I'd endured in silence. The last line said, "You taught Tyler to disrespect me. Now watch what disrespect costs." One of those letters would burn everything down. Arthur Pemberton arrived the following Monday morning carrying a leather briefcase worn soft with age. We'd worked together decades ago when I'd built the addition on his lake house. He'd been a young lawyer then. Now his hair was white like mine, but his mind stayed sharp. "Harold," he said, shaking my hand in the garage. "What's this about?" I showed him everything. The video footage, the bruise photos I'd taken that first morning, the letters I'd written, the timeline of how my family had treated me since Gloria died. Arthur watched the videos twice, his jaw tightening. When I finished, he set down his coffee and looked at me seriously. "Harold, you're sitting on something powerful here. Not just emotionally. Legally. We spent 2 hours drafting a document that would reshape my family's future." My hands shook signing it, but not from weakness. From the satisfaction of finally taking control. Arthur promised to file everything by Wednesday. "They're going to fight this," he warned. I smiled. Let them try. I wasn't just an old man anymore. I was there reckoning with a signature pen. My family believed I had nothing. Just a monthly pension and Social Security checks. They thought the house was Rachel's, that I was living here on her charity. They were wrong about everything. Back when Gloria got sick, I'd sold a rental property we owned near the university. The money, $230,000, I'd invested carefully over the years with Arthur's guidance. Then 3 years ago, when Rachel was struggling with mortgage payments after Marcus lost his job, I'd helped. Not with a gift, with a purchase. I'd bought 51% ownership of this house. My name was on the deed alongside hers, which she'd either forgotten or never bothered to understand. Arthur and I spent that Monday afternoon rewriting my will completely. Rachel's name, which had been primary beneficiary, got crossed out with one decisive line. Marcus got nothing. Tyler got nothing. Everything went to one person. Mia. Sweet 8-year-old Mia, who still smiled at me and snuck cookies to my room. She'd inherited all when she turned 18, held in trust until then. "The house they're kicking you out of," Arthur said, "isn't actually theirs to control." I nodded. The house they mocked me in was no longer theirs. It was mine to give. The chest pains started on a Wednesday morning while I was watering Gloria's rose bushes in the backyard. Sharp and sudden, like someone had driven a nail through my sternum. I dropped the hose, clutched the fence, and couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways. I heard myself call out before everything went gray. I woke up in the emergency room with machines beeping around me. Rachel stood by the door, talking to Marcus in whispers. I caught fragments. "Insurance will cover most of it. If something happens, at least we'll finally have full ownership of the house. The timing is actually convenient." Convenient. My potential death was convenient for them. I closed my eyes and felt something harden inside my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. The doctor said I'd had a mild cardiac episode brought on by stress. He prescribed rest, medication, and peace. I smiled at that last one. Peace. What a luxury. They kept me overnight for observation. Rachel visited once, briefly, checking her phone the whole time. That night, listening to machines measure my heartbeat, I made a decision. This health scare hadn't weakened me. It had clarified everything. That sentence revived me more than any doctor could. They brought me home on Thursday afternoon. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody offered to help me up the stairs to my room. I managed on my own, slowly, one step at a time, while they unpacked groceries downstairs. By evening I was exhausted. I lay on my bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Around 8 o'clock, I heard my bedroom door creak open. I kept my eyes closed, pretending sleep. Footsteps crossed my room. Light. Young. Tyler. I heard him moving near my dresser, then the quiet sound of my laptop being lifted. My eyes opened to slits just enough to see him tucking it under his arm before leaving. I waited 5 minutes. Then I checked my phone's camera app. The footage showed everything. Tyler entering. Searching through my things. Taking the laptop. 47 seconds of crystal clear theft. I checked my laptop's tracking software. It was downstairs in the living room. He was searching through my files right now, probably looking for bank information or the will. What he didn't know was that I'd moved all important documents weeks ago. Everything on that laptop was outdated. But watching him steal from me while I recovered from a heart episode, that footage was priceless. He'd found the recordings, but not the one that mattered most. Mia's 10th birthday arrived on Saturday with balloons and streamers decorating the living room. Rachel had invited half the neighborhood kids for an afternoon party. That morning at breakfast, she looked at me with false sympathy. "Dad, maybe you should rest in your room during the party. All the noise might be too much for your heart." Translation: "We don't want you embarrassing us in front of the neighbors." I nodded slowly. "Of course. I understand." I spent the afternoon in my room listening to children's laughter and music drifting through the walls. The isolation burned worse than the bruise on my chest ever had. Around 4 o'clock, my door opened quietly. Mia slipped inside carrying a cupcake with pink frosting and a single candle. "Hi, Grandpa," she whispered. "I saved you some cake." My throat tightened. This child, surrounded by presents and friends, had thought of the old man exiled upstairs. I hugged her carefully. "Thank you, sweetheart." She sat on the edge of my bed, swinging her legs. "I wish Mom wasn't so mean to you," she said quietly. "I hear her sometimes at night talking to Dad. She says bad words." I smoothed her hair. "Your mom is just stressed." "That doesn't make it okay," Mia said with the simple moral clarity of children. This little girl understood more about respect than her entire family. I made a promise right then. Whatever happened, I'd protect her from becoming like them. If they wanted to erase me from her memory, I'd make sure I was unforgettable. Sunday dinner. Roast chicken and vegetables. The whole family gathered around the table like we were normal. I'd spent all afternoon preparing. Not the food. The presentation. Halfway through the meal, I stood up slowly, using my cane for effect. "I want to show everyone something," I said. Rachel sighed. "Dad, we're eating. It'll just take a moment." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the living room television using the cable I'd set up that morning. The screen flickered to life. Then I pressed play. The footage of Tyler hitting me filled the 60-inch screen. Crystal clear. Sound perfect. You could hear the impact. See me stumble. Watch Rachel rush in and tell me to be strong, while her son stood there with clenched fists. The room went silent except for the video playing. Tyler's face drained of color. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. Rachel stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "Turn it off. Turn it off right now." But I kept playing. The second video started. Tyler mocking my walk while Rachel laughed. Then the third video. Tyler stealing my laptop while I recovered from a heart episode. Mia watched with wide eyes. Tyler ran from the room. Rachel was screaming about privacy and betrayal. "I recorded the truth," I said calmly, turning off the TV. "That's all. The truth." For the first time, the shame in this house belonged to the people who'd earned it. By Monday morning, everyone on Cedar Street knew. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't posted anything online. I'd simply shown the truth to my family. But truth has a way of escaping houses built on lies. Rachel's friend Monica from 3 doors down stopped waving when Rachel got her mail. The Jenkins family across the street suddenly found reasons to avoid conversation. Someone, probably Tyler bragging to friends who then told their parents, had spread the story. My grandson, the athlete, the honor roll student, caught on video attacking his grandfather. The neighborhood whispered. At school, Tyler's friends asked questions he couldn't answer. His basketball coach called wanting to discuss concerning behavior. Rachel stopped going to her Tuesday yoga class because the other women stared. By Wednesday, Tyler refused to leave his room. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, crying while bills piled up and her phone buzzed with messages she wouldn't read. I watched it all from my position on the back porch, coffee in hand, feeling something close to satisfaction. For the first time in 3 years, they saw regret in their eyes. And it wasn't enough. The police knocked on Thursday afternoon. 2 officers, one older with gray in his beard, one younger with kind eyes. Rachel answered the door, face pale. "Mrs. Winters? We'd like to ask some questions about a domestic situation reported to us." Someone had seen the video. Someone had called authorities. They sat in the living room while I stayed in the kitchen, listening. "Ma'am, we've received reports of potential elder abuse at this address, specifically regarding physical violence against your father." Rachel's voice cracked. "It was a misunderstanding. Family tension. Nothing serious. We've seen video footage that suggests otherwise." Silence. Then Rachel started crying. Full breakdown. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. Tyler has anger issues. We're dealing with it. The younger officer asked to speak with me. I came into the living room using my cane, moving slowly. They asked gentle questions. I answered honestly but carefully. Yes, my grandson had struck me. Yes, I felt unsafe sometimes. But no, I didn't want to press charges. I just want peace, I told them. I want my family to understand that respect matters. The officers left with warnings and paperwork. Rachel collapsed on the couch, sobbing, and I went back to my room, knowing that mercy is sometimes the sharpest knife of all. The for sale sign appeared in the front yard the following Tuesday morning. Driven into the lawn, I'd mowed every week for 3 years. Rachel was at work. Tyler was at school. Marcus was traveling. It was just me and the real estate agent, a professional woman named Angela who'd appraised the house last week. Mr. Fletcher, are you certain about this? She'd asked when I'd first contacted her. I'm certain, I'd told her. The house is mine to sell. 51% ownership. Now the sign stood there like a declaration of war. Bold red letters. Angela Associates Realty. Rachel came home at 3:30 and saw it from her car. I heard the brakes scream. Heard her door slam. Then she was storming toward the house, face twisted with panic and rage. She burst through my bedroom door without knocking. You can't sell this house, she screamed. This is my home. My children's home. I looked up from the book I was reading. Actually, I can. Majority ownership gives me that right. But I live here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said calmly. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't worth basic respect. Her face crumpled. Real fear replaced the anger. Dad, please. Please don't do this. We'll change. I promise. Too late, I said, returning to my book. Offers start coming in this week. She sank to her knees by my bed, actually begging. But I'd heard enough false apologies to last a lifetime. The home she used as a cage would soon be her eviction notice. The final breakfast happened on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after the sign went up. The house had sold in 6 days. Cash offer. Above asking price. Young couple with a baby who loved the craftsmanship and the garden Gloria had planted. They'd close in 30 days. Rachel had been looking at apartments she could barely afford. Marcus was sleeping on his brother's couch. Tyler was living with Amanda temporarily. Everything was falling apart for them. But I made pancakes that morning anyway. From scratch. The way Gloria taught me 50 years ago. Rachel came into the kitchen smelling of lavender soap. Her eyes were red from crying. She'd lost weight. Lost the confident edge she'd carried for years. She sat down at the table without speaking. I set a plate of pancakes in front of her, golden brown and perfect. Then I sat down across from her with my own plate. We ate in silence for a while. Finally she whispered, Dad, why did you do all this? I set down my fork and looked at the daughter I'd raised. Because you forgot who raised you, I said quietly. You forgot that respect is earned by giving it. You forgot that I'm a person, not a convenience. She cried into her pancakes. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you destroyed. I finished my breakfast, washed my plate, and walked out of that house for the last time without looking back. But someone followed me. I moved into a small apartment near the river. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where I could cook for myself. It was the first place that had been truly mine since Gloria died. No family obligations. No one treating me like a burden. Just me and the sound of water outside my window. The first few weeks were peaceful. I read books I'd been meaning to finish for years. I started a small garden on my balcony. I joined a woodworking group at the community center. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed without feeling like I needed permission. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwriting I recognized immediately. Mia's. The envelope was decorated with stickers and careful drawings of flowers. Inside, 3 pages written in shaky letters. Dear Grandpa, I miss you so much. Mom cries every day. She says she made terrible mistakes. Dad moved out. Tyler is living with Aunt Amanda. Mom says we have to move to a smaller apartment soon. I don't like it there. There's no yard, and the neighbors are loud. I miss your pancakes. I miss the stories you used to tell me about Grandma. I miss feeling safe. Please write back. I love you. Mia. My hands shook holding that letter. This child was innocent. She'd never hurt me. She was caught in the destruction I'd caused while teaching her family a lesson. I called Arthur that afternoon. I need to make one more change to the will, I said. I rewrote the will again, but this time it came with conditions. Arthur came to my apartment the next morning with his briefcase and reading glasses. We sat at my small kitchen table while I explained what I wanted. The house money from the sale, all of it goes to Mia, I said. But she doesn't get it until she's 18. Until then, it stays in a trust that pays for her education, her needs. Nothing else. What about your daughter? Arthur asked carefully. Not a cent, I said. She made her choices. She can live with the consequences. We spent 2 hours drafting the new terms. Mia would inherit everything, but there was a condition. She had to live separately from Rachel until she turned 18. No exceptions. If Rachel tried to use Mia's money, she'd lose access completely. This protects the child, Arthur said, signing as witness. But it's going to destroy your relationship with your daughter permanently. That relationship died the day she told me to be strong while her son stood over me with clenched fists, I said. I'm just making it official. Arthur packed his briefcase. I sat alone holding a copy of the new will. Justice with mercy. One more lesson to teach about the cost of taking family for granted. Guilt still had one more name to expose. The newspaper article appeared 3 weeks later. A local journalist named Patricia Holbrook had somehow heard about my story. Grandfather fights back. One man stand against family abuse. The headline stretched across the metro section with my photo from the community center woodworking class. The article told everything. Tyler's attack, Rachel's dismissal, the hidden cameras, the house sale, my new will protecting Mia. Patricia had contacted Rachel for comment. Rachel had responded with a furious statement about privacy and family matters that should stay private, which made her sound exactly as defensive as she was. By evening, the story had gone viral online. Local news stations called requesting interviews. Social media exploded with opinions. The grandpa who fought back started trending. My phone rang constantly. Rachel called 15 times that first day. I let every call go to voicemail. In each message, her voice climbed higher with panic. Dad, please, this is destroying me. Everyone at work saw the article. Tyler got suspended from basketball. Please make them take it down. But I didn't call her back. Didn't remove the article. Instead, I called Patricia and gave her a follow-up interview. If they wanted to paint me as a problem, I'd show the world exactly what problem I was solving. I didn't remove it. I amplified it. With the money from the house sale, I made a decision that surprised even Arthur. I opened a small woodworking program at the Jefferson Community Center for at-risk teenage boys. Kids who were angry, lost, struggling with the same rage that had consumed Tyler. The program was free. I provided all the materials, tools, and time. We met 3 afternoons a week. I taught them to measure twice and cut once. To sand until their arms ached. To understand that building something requires patience, not anger. The first group of boys arrived skeptical, sent by counselors or parents who'd run out of options. They slouched in chairs and rolled their eyes. Then I handed them each a piece of wood and a hammer. You're going to build a birdhouse, I said. Start to finish. Your own design. Your own work. By the 3rd week, something shifted. The boys started showing up early. Started asking questions about joints and stains. Started taking pride in smooth edges and tight corners. A kid named Marcus, 15 and angry at the world, built a birdhouse for his grandmother. He cried when he finished it. I've never made anything good before, he said. I understood that feeling. Building something matters. It gives you purpose beyond destruction. Over weeks, I watched these boys transform. They learned that anger could be channeled, that their hands could create instead of destroy. Each one reminded me of Tyler, but softer, humbler, given a chance to become better before it was too late. 6 months after I left Rachel's house, someone knocked on my apartment door on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting visitors. I opened the door and found Tyler standing there. He'd grown taller, filled out across the shoulders, but his face looked older than his 16 years. Guilt does that to young faces. We stared at each other for a long moment. The last time we'd been this close, he'd been hitting me. Now he stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Grandpa, he said quietly, can I talk to you? I stepped aside. Let him in. He walked to my small living room and stood awkwardly by the window. I've been going to therapy, he started. Court ordered after the police report. My therapist said I should come see you. To apologize. I'm listening, I said. He turned to face me, tears in his eyes. I was so angry all the time. At school. At home. At myself. And you were just there. Easy to blame for everything. I knew you wouldn't fight back. So I pushed harder. His voice broke. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm sorry for hitting you, for stealing from you, for every cruel thing I said or did. I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't see you as a person. I sat down slowly. And now I see everything I destroyed, he said. Mom lost the house. Dad moved out. Mia barely talks to any of us. And you're here alone because we made you feel unwelcome. You did make me unwelcome, I said. Yes, sir. He wiped his eyes. Is there any way I can fix this? I looked at this boy standing in my apartment with genuine remorse in his eyes. Real change is rare. Real apologies rarer. You want to fix it? I asked. He nodded desperately. I stood up and walked to my closet, pulled out my old toolbox, set it on the table, and opened it. Hammers and saws gleaming in the afternoon light. Then build something instead of breaking it, I said, handing him a hammer. Tyler took it with shaking hands, held it like it was precious. I don't know how. I'll teach you, I said, if you're willing to learn. He took the hammer, trembling. And for the first time, I believed change was possible. Years later, I watched Mia graduate high school, smiling in her cap and gown. My grandson stood beside her, quieter now, kinder. He'd spent 2 years coming to my woodworking program, learning to channel his anger into creation. He'd built furniture for his new apartment, built a bookshelf for Mia's college dorm, built trust back slowly, one project at a time. My daughter approached me after the ceremony, tears in her eyes. She'd moved to a small apartment across town, found work that paid her bills, learned to live within her means instead of expecting others to fund her lifestyle. Dad, she said quietly, voice trembling. I wanted to say you were right. About everything. You were the strong one all along. I looked at her for a long moment. Saw the woman she'd become after losing everything. Saw genuine remorse mixed with hard-earned wisdom. No, I said finally. I just remembered who I was before you forgot. Mia hugged me tight, whispering thank you for the trust fund that would pay for her education, for protecting her when no one else would, for showing her that standing up for yourself isn't cruelty. It's survival. The story that began with a punch ended with a legacy, with Tyler learning to build instead of destroy, with Mia safe and educated, with Rachel understanding that respect isn't optional, and with me, finally, living in peace. They'll never outlive this lesson, and I'll never forget the moment I decided I was worth defending.